One of the prominent inspirations of my No Fast Travel series for Elden Ring was Dark Souls 1 in its entirety. Despite not being considered a proper open world game like Elden Ring, Dark Souls is renowned for having a brilliantly interconnected map where you can often find multiple different ways into areas, and naturally, ways to backtrack out of them. So that does beg the question, can you beat Dark Souls 1 in its entirety without fast traveling? The main rule will be that I can't warp via bonfires to other bonfires, as this is the main method of fast travel in this game. Homeward Bones, or the Dark Sign, will also not be allowed, as this can be abused to not have to backtrack for great distances. For instance, if I go down to Blighttown and kill Quelaag, I could simply ignore any bonfire down there, use a Homeward Bone, and be warped back to Firelink, which sort of defeats the purpose. The point of the run is to see if the world can be traversed on foot, forwards and backwards. I'll also try not to abuse death by ignoring bonfires, which could serve a similar purpose as the Homeward Bone example. But I won't be too strict on that one, in case I just happen to forget an odd bonfire here and there, and I actually just die. Dying unintentionally would make that more of an inconvenience than anything, but abusing death for purposes like this will be banned. Now before proceeding to the run, we should address the elephant in the room first. This game doesn't even have a proper fast travel method until halfway-ish into the game, when you get the Lord Vessel. This means that for any segment of the map that is reachable without the Lord Vessel, it should be perfectly safe for our run. It's the areas that are after the yellow fog gates that'll be most interesting. But at the same time, there's some areas in the map, even in the pre-Lord Vessel regions, that you'd be amazed you can backtrack on foot, and I'll make sure to spotlight those. Alright, that should be all. Let's get into it. I started out as Knight, as I very much plan to take my time, and I'm not too concerned about fast rolling, so I'll just play as a little tanky Knight. I haven't gotten the opportunity to play like that in ages. I got the Master Key of course. For a run like this, it'll certainly be even more helpful than usual. There's not much to discuss in the Asylum, as you'd expect. It's just your usual straightforward run through it. So going into Firelink Shrine, I went on a looting spree there, including going to the graveyard, because I'm insane, and even into the beginning parts of New Londo Ruins and Valley of Drakes, which very quickly led to my first death. But I got my stain back with little trouble. Now I will be boringly going through Undeadburg as normal to begin, because there are a few things I need in the first bit of the game. So onwards we go. Where this happened? I wanted to take him with me for the whole level, but alas, he despawned. I've talked at length in the previous videos about Dark Souls 1 level design, and even as early as Undeadburg, this is a good showcase on how good it is. And the main factor in this level is how it loops in on itself. Basically, no matter in which nook and cranny you go, or which part of the level you drop down to, you always end up being looped back onto the main path. Now this is extra important in this game due to the fact that you can't fast travel yet, and certainly not from anywhere in the map like you can in Elden Ring, but even from the bonfires at the beginning. So you can be pretty assured that Dark Souls will give you a method to return somewhere, say even if you drop down a hole that looks like you'd be stuck otherwise. We'll see more examples like this as we go, but this is a good introduction to this type of level design without being too overwhelming. As for what I need here, the main thing I'm hoping to get is a Black Knight sword from this Black Knight right here, as having a Twinkling Titanite upgrade weapon would be convenient for this playthrough. Unfortunately, I didn't get it, so I will be trying for a few more here shortly, but for now I did grab this short sword instead, just so I can have a weapon moveset I prefer over the broadsword. I did also go get the Havel's Ring, so I did the usual parry or post chain all the way until I kill them. Although I don't mind taking my time, fat rolling is definitely a little much. I'll settle on mid rolling. Taurus Demon wasn't a problem with the gold pine resin and the plunge of course. If you didn't know, at least after getting the shortcut ladder back to the Burg, you can wait in this corner to bait the Drake to come down, and then you can run by, or try to get the tail or whatever. I did kill the Black Knight up here, and I got the Black Knight Greatsword this time. I certainly could use it, but I wasn't really going for an Ultra Greatsword in this playthrough. Maybe I will use it later. I won't be able to wield it for a long time anyway. I usually use the Alluring Skulls to plunge the boar here, but I decided to try and lower it into the fire there, and it worked like a dream. Not sure why I never thought of this before. Now of course, I did discuss individual level design being phenomenal already, but that's only one factor of what made Dark Souls 1 a very memorable experience from an exploration standpoint. This shortcut elevator back to Firelink was a mind-blowing experience for I imagine most first-time players. It only took me an hour and a half to get here on this run, but in a first playthrough, I imagine this was hours later, so it'd be incredibly easy to forget this elevator segment even if you saw it from Firelink, and much less expect to be looped back here when you have traversed a long way, especially upwards. Connecting the map this precisely takes a whole lot more effort in a 3D world than it does a 2D one. From here I took a brief detour to the end of the Asylum again, because there's a few things I want. In your return visit, 2 Black Knights spawn, the ones with the sword, so I did try my luck there. The first one didn't drop it, but the second one dropped the shield. Ugh. Oh well, guess I'm sticking with a normal path weapon then. Does this boulder normally come back? I don't recall that being the case, but oh well. I did get the rusted iron ring. It's not often I pick it up before Blighttown, and that'll be especially useful this run. After that, I quickly went back to upgrade my short sword to +5, mostly by buying some shards from Andre. But from there, my next big step is to get the large ember to unlock upgrading to +10. From here, I return to the asylum. In this whole process, I never really rested, hoping that some of the enemies don't respawn, but unfortunately the ones in the asylum did anyway. In order to demonstrate something, and also to get a Titanite slab ahead of time, since I don't really have another easily accessible shot at a Black Knight, I'll probably just stick with a short sword all the way now. I did go to Stray Demon. This one I'm definitely taking on way earlier than normal, so it was going to be a little bit of a grind. And it immediately started off in the wrong foot, but I did manage to recover. I figured it would help to use my leftover gold pine resins to speed up this as much as possible. And without too much hassle after the initial one, I did manage to kill him eventually. Only took 7 minutes. So we did drop down a hole in order to reach Stray Demon here. And in a game like Elden Ring, that'd certainly be an immediate red flag when you can't fast travel. Especially when it does so by tricking you and crumbling the floor underneath you. But in this game, and potentially how early you can reach it, it's not something to worry about. After the boss, the game gives you a ladder to climb out of there. This is what I meant in the previous videos, where giving you fast travel, especially when you can do it via map, like you can in Elden Ring, it sometimes just hampers any need for cool ways to connect the map in a dynamic way. And this isn't even a particularly impressive example, it's just a ladder. But you know damn well that in Elden Ring, they likely would have just had you warp out of the boss arena when you killed it. After that I went back to Firelink and killed Lautrec for the Fat Ring, of course. I also reinforced the flask via the Firekeeper Soul. And then from there, I finally returned to the parish. I kindled the bonfire there for a little help, leveled up for the first time in a little bit, and finally went to kill the gargoyles. With a +5 weapon, they're definitely not super hard. Look at this plunge though. Holy. I briefly went to Darkroot Basin to get the elite armor. And I did kill the Moonlight Butterfly while I was there, by whiffing nearly every damn bomb I had on me. I did take advantage of the Divine Ember to at least start making my Morning Star a divine weapon to permanently kill skeletons later on. But from there I went to the depths to get the large ember. Not much to discuss in Lower Berg, aside from a few close calls in the hallway. I pretty much just poised through most of the early Capra fight. I did amazingly get the Demon Machete from Capra. I didn't even know you could get it from the proper boss one. The large ember is early in the depths, so I immediately doubled back to upgrade my weapon, but then I remembered I don't have materials to upgrade much, just twice, so I at least stayed to collect more upgrades here. Ironically, as I was killing some slimes, I had a green Titanite shard drop, so I guess I have that now too. Kirk ended up invading me as I was human for kindling all over the place, and I accidentally ended up BMing him with my motion gestures. I also got the Ring of the Evil Eye here, which will certainly be invaluable for this run, as it was to have the equivalent item in Elden Ring, though I could get this so much earlier in this one, which is awesome. Gaping Dragon took a little while to kill, despite the +5 short sword, that's just how tanky he is, but it went fine. During the dungeon, I only found one large Titanite shard, which wasn't even enough to get another upgrade, but I went back to do so anyway, since obviously coming up is Blighttown. I went back to the depths entrance, took the shortcut from the lower Undead Berg to Firelink, then the elevator back up to Parish for Andre. There I upgraded my short sword to +7, also went ahead and modified the Morningstar to Divine. I was going to backtrack to the depths to get to Blighttown, but this is not really something I need in the upper part of it. Plus it's a really long trek, and not super pretty. So I thought, hey, let's actually take advantage of the Master Key, and take the other path instead. I did go for the Firekeeper Soul here too, and I was unlucky enough to not get a single Toxic Cure item from the Dart Blowers. So I just waited for it to clear once I killed most of them. I did eventually get the soul with little trouble besides that. I did also briefly go into the other segment of Blighttown to get Power Within, just in case I thought there's any point where my DPS could benefit more. I killed the wall hooker buck from the side because I can't find the back path most of the fucking time I go for this. So I didn't even try. Quelaag went very well, but I did have this funny head bonk on me at the end. Before leaving Blighttown, I did want to take the chance to do something that I don't think many people bother to do, and probably don't expect you to be able to do. Go down to Ash Lake and return before the Lord Vessel. The Great Hollow level before it is pretty much entirely vertical movement, down, and it does require dropping down to other branches here and there. so it's only natural for you to not expect to be able to climb back up. But we'll see how shortly. The one item that definitely would be nice to get here is a Chloranthy ring. So I did get that while I was here, and then proceeded to Ash Lake. I ended up getting cursed, because I was doing a lot less damage than expected, at least one-handed, and then taking more curse buildup than expected. They even put my petrified statue to taunt me. But now in Ash Lake, there definitely isn't anything I need. I'm not using any dragon weapons. But I did go to the Ancient Dragon, and I entered the Covenant as my little trophy for doing this. And its tail, but don't tell him that. Of course, now we're making our way back, and here's how you make your way back up. You may have noticed a ladder or two when dropping down the tree, and this is definitely the key. There's two near the viney areas, and then one more near the actual branch area. So you take those up, and then you gotta essentially backtrack through the branches. Be careful in this spot, the geometry is kinda weird, and you'll eventually be looped back to the bonfire at the top of the tree. It certainly isn't as impressive when ladders are used, I'll admit, but it's still very nice that they thought to, and allowed you to backtrack from this area when it is a place you can reach before the Lord Vessel. Even when most players won't be doing this, be it that they don't even know it exists, or they don't want to bother doing that. From Blytown, I went through Valley of Drakes, then through Darkroot Basin to get to the end of Parish, just to take a different path, and grabbing the Grasscrest shield along the way. I upgraded my short sword to +9, I needed the last 3 for +10, of course also went to Oswald to get a Purging Stone to cure the curse. I got a second one just in case. Definitely doesn't hurt to be safe in a run like this. Also went to reinforce my flask again to +2, and then went to Sen's Fortress. There isn't a ton to talk about here. I almost lost it all trying to hit the elevator, but leaving it. I did want to make sure to get it for later on. It definitely makes backtracking through here miles easier. This snake be like us for real for real. Iron Golem went okay as well. Now in Enter Londo, before going too deep into it, I did take the chance to do the Painted World. I did get the doll from the asylum earlier. This level is interesting since it's completely disconnected from the normal map, and it actually traps you here until you're done. To showcase that, I took a totally intentional death here at this bridge, showing that it keeps you inside of it. Even if you had the Lord Vessel, I believe it wouldn't let you warp. This level is definitely among the best ones, and I do think it's at least in part because it is disconnected from the normal map. From my understanding, this was among the first levels they designed for this game, and instead of trying to connect it and making it make sense that there's a snowy area so close to, Enter Londo or whatever, they just decided to make it a little Mario 64-esque painting warp. The other major part that makes it great is that it has an impressive amount of vertical design to it, adding a whole other layer of exploration that isn't used as much in the other levels individually, at least not to this degree. The one thing I will say against it is that it is easy to get lost in it due to how samey a lot of the rooms are. It doesn't help that it does repeat a lot of the same enemies in similar areas, and they're not being a coherent layout, since it seems to be a crumbling world and all that. But this mostly goes when you're exploring every corner of the area, and you're unsure if you've already been a certain way. When you're only trying to reach the end, there's enough major set pieces that stand out that will let you know where you are. I'll leave you to that. I did leave Priscilla be since I didn't need anything from her either. I mostly just wanted to show the Painted World. Back in Enter Londo proper, there wasn't much I needed here either, aside from the giant blacksmith. So although I did explore all of it, I prioritized getting to him. I upgraded my short sword to +10 finally, and I ended up using some of the spare materials to upgrade my armor a bit. Another feature that's been stripped out of later games, but maybe for the better this time. It was also here that I remembered and realized that the smiths sell a weapon upgrade box, which would have been used for earlier, but maybe not so much anymore. From there I was pretty much right at Ornstein and Smell, so I went ahead and fought them. I wasn't really going for either of their balsa weapons, or for the Leo ring, so I just went for my usual comfort strategy of killing Ornstein first, and dealing with Super Smell, which although hairy here and there, went alright. I had kindled the bonfire nearby, and that was definitely a good idea, otherwise I would have had to rely on humanities. Of course, after that we finally have the Lord Vessel, which I guess doesn't change much for us, but it does unlock the final areas of the game. From here, I will have to manually backtrack through Enter Londo and such to place the Lord Vessel to unlock the Yellow Fog Gates, as much as I would just love to do those archives right now. I will be back shortly to do that though. If you didn't know, you can take the Batwing Demons back to Sen's Fortress too. As stated, the cage elevator was massively helpful, allowing me to skip most of Sen's Fortress when backtracking. Parish was just a matter of taking the elevator back to Firelink of course, so I made it quickly, realizing that I'd never talked to Fran before this. I placed Lord Vessel, then I went back immediately to Duke's Fortress just to get it done already. So back to Parish, Sen's, and in a reasonable amount of time, back in Anor Londo, and only a quick trek to Duke's archives. As I said, this world is very well connected when you know what to do, and it's not too much of a waste of time, unlike another game. I used a rare ring of sacrifice during the first Seath encounter, which surprisingly kept my human form too. I didn't realize it did that, or maybe the normal ones do as well, I don't know, but I'll take it. Duke's Archives proper is pretty standard for this run. It's the crystal caves where things get interesting. There's this drop down right here, which at face value seems like a death sentence for our run, and even I got nervous about it for a little bit there, because it's been a long time I've tried to backtrack out of here, like this. But from there you can drop to this other giant crystal, and there's an invisible path that loops you back up here, if you don't fall like me. So luckily for us, Crystal Cave and Seath are still good to go. From there we are finally done with anything above ground, so to speak, so we can leave the Anor Londo region indefinitely. I should also mention that the DLC is off limits, since you get warped in there by Manus, and then don't have the means to go back without fast traveling. So back to Sen's Fortress, and Undead Parish. From here I decided to finally do New Londo Ruins, in order to get the very large Ember to get plus 15 weapons. I did have this annoying death in New Londo. Don't even know how that happened. You do need to drain the water first in order to get it, but from there it isn't long before you get the very large Ember. Before going back to upgrade, I did go ahead and at least give the Four Kings a try. And... Oh. Yeah, so from here I would need the Covenant of Artorias ring in order to fight the Four Kings. But even if I had that, I'd make a giant drop down that we wouldn't be able to get back out of. And as you saw, this actually also goes for Bed of Chaos and Nida. So that pretty much dooms our run right here. I did try to get creative for some of them before just giving up, so I tried something I thought of. For Nida, I entered the boss room, quit out, then backtrack all the way to the catacombs. Yes, if you didn't know, you can backtrack to the Tomb of the Giants and catacombs on foot. You can arrive almost at the boss without the lore vessel after all. See, there's even a message that tells you there's a shortcut back. And then from there, I took the coffin to his boss room once again, in the Covenant joining scenario. Next I tried dying to the boss arena, and hoping that the coffin would still be there after I killed Nida. So I went forward to his boss arena proper once again, and actually fought him. I did use the Divine Mace to permanently kill the small skeletons here, and then killed Nida. I checked around without resting at the bonfire, and the coffin was nowhere to be found, unfortunately. But even still, this only means we could have gone a third lore so if it worked, and we'd be stuck in the third one, the fourth one being out of reach. So let's get into it. Why is it that when like 90% of the game is perfectly fine to traverse forwards and backwards, there's these three choke points that kill that possibility right at the end? I can think of 3 different points that could explain it, but I do think they're all part of the same picture. The first and likely most presumed possibility is the whole idea that the later half of the game was rushed. Now, people like to say that everything after Lord Vessel was rushed and unfinished due to the tight deadline on Dark Souls, which given it was under 3 years of development, it's not unrealistic, but I personally wasn't super sold on the whole later half of the game being unfinished. I did try and see if there's any source for this commonly spouted thought, and there wasn't really any direct interview by Miyazaki or anything that confirmed any of the areas are unfinished due to time restraints. The closest I found was Miyazaki admitting that Bed of Chaos didn't really live up to their vision due to the deadlines, but not the entirety of the area. I suspect one of the main reasons people say that about the entirety of the second half of the game is unfinished is because they don't like it. I mean, Duke's Archives and Crystal Caves have a very confusing design, including the invisible floor thing. Tomb of the Giants has a darkness mechanic, New Londo is not necessarily super long, and Izalith is a little bit of a bad boss rush, and the lava segment is incredibly flat. Definitely doesn't live up to the really interesting design. Personally, I do agree with Izalith being underwhelming at least, and the bosses being bad, and maybe with New Londo being short. I'm personally indifferent to that one, but I wholly disagree with the other two. I would absolutely say Duke's plus Crystal Caves and the Tomb of the Giants are fully featured. They just have more of a gimmick going on to it than the other two, or the rest of the areas of the game. But that doesn't make them unfinished, or even outright bad. It might just not be to your taste. I mean, if you recall, a lot of people made a riot about Dark Souls 2 not fully committing to a darkness mechanic that probably would have worked similar to what you have in Tomb of the Giants. Perhaps just more fleshed out than what we have in Tomb of the Giants, where you only have 2 light sources that are a little bit obscure to find than the torches would have been. Could they have done more with it? Probably, yeah. But certainly not to the degree that people make it out to be, in my opinion. Anyway, let's run with that idea nonetheless, just to see if that could partly explain these drops. You could certainly make a case that the end bits of the game were rushed, but when you look at the individual cases, it doesn't seem like it'll take a lot of effort to connect them. The Bit of Chaos one could have simply been a stairway instead of a slide. The Four Kings could have just been a pathway where you need the ring instead of a drop down into the abyss. And Nido could have just not been a drop and put you right in the boss arena. But pretty much all these points lead me to the second major possibility. All these little drop downs feel like something they intentionally wanted to do. For Bit of Chaos, this isn't the only slide in the game by any means, but it's certainly the most significant one. So they probably intended to make it a little bit more of a scenic entrance. It's not something they get to play with much in this game. The Four Kings drop also feels very intentionally like a cinematic thing. Of course, dropping into the abyss makes sense, or at the very least a way to demonstrate the need for the ring. And Nido also feels intentional in the sense that they wanted you to have to take fall damage in order to induce panic for the fight to start off. This is something my goat Matthew Matos talks about in his huge Dark Souls commentary, along with the fact that you can't traverse these areas backwards as well, I believe, saying that the Nido drop likely was intended to cause you to want to heal immediately and then getting stabbed from below with the magic sword thing, causing you to start panicking when you don't know where the attack is coming from, and so forth. So all in all, these all seem like they feasibly could have been intended to be this way the whole time, which would have been possible by 3. The fact that you can fast travel already. If they already knew that they wanted to reward you with the Lord Vessel that allows you to fast travel between bonfires, there's a good chance that they took that opportunity to just make a few other set pieces that were only possible, at least without using a Homeward Bone, which are limited, the Dark Sign, or just dying I guess, because they gave you fast travel by now. So all of these factors together could give us a potential answer. It could have gone something like this. They thought of, let's say, the Nido drop down, for those reasons stated prior, which they could only do because they gave you fast travel by now, and they were already on a tight deadline, so they went with it. Or you could switch the order. They were on a tight deadline, so they decided to make you drop down to this area because they couldn't connect it properly, especially if they met the Nido arena earlier because of the Covenant, and they thankfully decided to give you fast travel already. See what I mean? It's hard to say which possibility was the leading cause, but any way you look at it, there could be any number of reasons why they decided to do this. I think Matthew said this in his video I mentioned as well, but it's definitely disappointing that they didn't follow through with making this part of the map also be traversed backwards, because it feels like it goes against the spirit of the game overall. Just like open worlds are sometimes praised for that feature. Like how much more respected would this game be if every single inch of the map is not out of the realm of being traversed all the way through on foot? It's not like fast travel will lose its purpose even if this was the case. You can still use it as a convenience instead of having to go on foot everywhere. It's still a great bonus, but who knows what the ultimate reasoning was. So yeah, I guess appropriately, this tomb will be my grave. But hey, Civ gets to stay alive. Yay! So, do I think you should try out a run like this? Or at least until a spot you can? Well, after watching this, it'll certainly be up to you if you think it's worth it. It's not like it adds a whole ton of extra gameplay when more than half of the game you gotta traverse like this anyway. But because of that, I certainly don't think you need to. Playing like this in this game certainly isn't as novel as it is in Elden Ring and such, but I will admit it was fun in its own right. If I didn't have the additional pressure of having to make a video out of it, I imagine it would have had even more fun, which is certainly something y'all have an advantage in. You don't have to write a book report after you're done. Now real quick before we end, I do want to address Bloodborne. At the end of the Shadow of the Erdtree run, I said Bloodborne was next, and I did work on that for like 2 or 3 weeks straight. But I was unable to finish the run for one simple reason. It was much harder than I anticipated. Like, I knew what I was getting into. I did think through the run in my head and realized what I was going to have to do, but it far exceeded my expectations. And even though I considered myself to be pretty good at these games, especially my favorite ones, like Bloodborne, I knew that it was going to be a much longer project than anticipated, and I wasn't ready to commit so much time to it, quite yet. And especially with Night Rain around the corner. So I pivoted and decided to work on Dark Souls 1, which I knew I could do in a reasonable amount of time. I'm considering eventually doing a weekly live stream of it where I do attempts, though maybe after I set up save files to practice first. And perhaps y'all could help me with strategies too, who knows. Definitely let me know if you'd be interested in that. But it'd definitely be in the future since Night Rain is around the corner. And I'd probably like to finish the easier games first, like Sekiro or whatever. If you want to know more about what was the sticking points in the end that made me quit, you can ask me in the comments. I don't want to get too into it to spoil the video here, but I'm okay with answering below.